Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Oran, and with me this week we have Krysta.
Hey!
Aaron.
Hi.
And David.
Hey, hey.
And this week we're going to continue our character dossier series with the two Didacts, the Eurodidact and the Isodidact. If you don't know, there are two Didacts. One of them is in Halo 4, and we will tell you which one that is, and all about the other ones, of course. Spoilers for the Forerunner saga, but that's fine. We talk about it all the time. But before we get started, a few housekeeping. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is Podcast Evolved, and it hosts a variety of shows. This is our main show where we report on Halo news, Halo lore, and talk directly to you, the listener. We have our other shows, Halo Headlines, Builds with Blocks, Halo Book Club, and Mission Debrief, which Mission Debrief is currently doing their 20 for 20 series on our YouTube channel, if you want to check that out. And we do have a partnership with HCS Pro Talk, where Will and Josh discuss the latest information within the competitive Halo scene with an emphasis on community every single week. So shout out to those guys. They're amazing. We love working with them and hearing all the latest competitive news. You can learn more about our shows and HCS Pro Talk on our website, halopodcastevolve.com. If you're already a fan of the show, we ask that you rate us and leave us a review. We greatly appreciate all the feedback that we receive from our listeners to just improve the quality and the quantity of our shows. If you would like to, or we would like to take this moment, let me start over on that one. We would like to take this moment to thank all of our patrons for their continued support. Thank you guys so much. You guys really keep the lights on, have been enabling us to do so much more with our network that we're doing. We even just updated all of our social media icons and our profile pictures and things like that, and our logos. And all of that was in support with our Patreon community. So thank you guys so much for that. If you would like to be a patron or just learn more about the unique rewards and swag and even our own soundtrack that you can listen to, you can head over to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolve to learn more. Now, last week on Halo, before we get into our lore topic, let's go with Aaron. What have you done the past week in the Halo world?
I have done very little to no Halo. Well, no.
I don't like that answer.
Bit. I know, I'm sorry. Well, I did some book Halo. I listened to New Blood. I listened to Bad Blood, I think, the week before, so I've now done New Blood. This is my mission to listen to all the Halo books that took place around or after Halo 5.
All right. So you listen to Bad Blood first and then New Blood?
I wasn't going to listen to New Blood because I figured I remembered it all near enough, and then as I listened to Bad Blood, I went, I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. I need to go back to this after. And now I'm on to Envoy, because when we were doing the 2557 to Infinite episode, I struggled to differentiate some of those novels in my head, so it was like, right, I need to go back and do all these. So I'm just
Envoy's
started
a good
Envoy.
one.
It is a good, and I like Halo books like that are, well, Envoy's not as much a kind of standalone book, but it sort of is, because it doesn't really tie into Cold Protocol other than the characters. It's just a good story by itself. Like Broken Circle's another one. It's just sometimes it's nice to have a book that isn't part of a series, and it's just, here's a story, and then we're done.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would even put Legacy of Onyx in that category as well, even though it does have other sort of connections and stuff. But it's nice to have a fairly contained story within whatever's going on that just gives a nice, just Halo content. So yeah, I approve of your Halo activities.
That was
and recommend
that
other
was
people
it.
to listen or read those Halo novels.
Yes, they're very good. Worth a go over. I haven't done any Halo gaming this week, and the little bit of gaming I did do was Gears of War related, so we'll not go into that.
Fair enough. Although there are Halo characters in Gears of War. I think 4.
That is
Gears
true. I did
4,
play as... no, Gears 5 has Kat and Emil.
I thought it was 4.
No, they're the Forge characters.
Good nonetheless.
5.
David, what did you do this last week?
I've done a little bit, mostly for mission debrief. So we played some ODST, which is really fun. Because we did some 3 players with Matt, myself, and Krysta, which is pretty cool. I haven't done that in a long, long time. So that was cool. That was pretty fun playing ODST. I don't think I'd ever done it in Master Chief Collection, like played ODST co-op. So it was kind of, I wasn't really sure who you play as. So you're just generic ODSTs when you're like not the main character. So that was kind of interesting.
All right.
I kind of forgotten or didn't even know that was that. I didn't know if we were just going to be like 3 Dutches running around. But no, you just get generic loadouts and generic ODST skins. And other than that, I haven't done much.
Is it not your your ODST skin? Because you can customize your ODST for like firefight and stuff. No,
I think all
maybe.
you can do for firefight, I think, is pick between the different characters, and I think you might. Well, in old ODST, I think you could do like helmet on, helmet off for everyone but the rookie. But I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that comes into the campaign.
I see. Okay.
The thing
sense.
I like
Fair enough.
when you play a co-op ODST at the start is you all appear in like different drop pods in the same area. Because I think I did that once.
I do remember that. That was
I'm in a
good
weird spot.
Oh, on the streets? Yeah, that's cool.
And then you all have to like link up and then play the game.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Very
fun to do
cool.
a whole playthrough of it. But that's pretty much it. MCC's good. It's a good looking game. They're constantly updating it. I'm pretty happy that it's still where it is. But,
Nice. Krysta, a
Aye.
little bit of the same.
Yeah, pretty much. Just, the mission debrief stuff. Also just making people angry on Twitter. The Halo community has been really fun. That's about it.
Yes, the Halo community is very hot and cold.
Yeah, it's been entertaining. It's been an interesting experience.
So you're saying that the like post-flight honeymoon is over?
Maybe.
warmth.
It definitely is with the Halo community.
Yeah, the
Everyone
warmth
was
and
very
united
happy,
joy.
and now everyone's very angry. But we'll talk about that another time.
What did it last? Like a week? We got one whole week.
A week.
Well, it was a little longer than that.
Maybe a
I
week.
mean, the flight
2
happened
weeks.
probably about 3. I'd say because we had the flight at the end of July. We're recording this at the end of August ish. So yeah, about 2 to 3 weeks. So, but that's all right, everyone. Put your happy face on. Infinite is coming out this year. It's gonna be great. I myself, I haven't done a whole lot. I think I played a few multiplayer. I try to dabble into some multiplayer on MCC every week, just because those like most of my achievements I've left in MCC are either multiplayer related, lasso related, or just like random hard achievements that I just haven't gotten around to do, like the library on Legendary without dying. And I think there's actually, I think I have the ODST one where it's the 4-player co-op on the last level sort of a thing. So I just was like, I'll just play a few rounds here or there. So I kind of have only done that, but I'm more so just kind of just waiting patiently for the next Infinite flight and then for the game, and just kind of getting through some other, I guess, backlog titles if you want to think about that. But now on Game Pass, they keep adding new stuff like pretty much every week. So there's a lot of exciting games out there that I've been kind of dabbling in, but yeah, that's us, I guess. Should we talk about our lore for the week?
If we must.
So Aaron has graciously offered himself as tribute to take us through yet another week's, or I guess month's. I don't know. We kind of do this every
About once a month.
About once a month. I think we're kind of starting to get into 2 times a month because of the way the schedule's coming out.
We
but
do.
last time we talked about the librarian, who is a very influential character throughout the Halo timeline, and kind of sort of related to her is the Didacts that are very influential within her life, within the Forerunner history, and how it kind of has evolved over the last 100,000 years until we get to present day Halo. So just kind of briefly talking about the librarian. Her full name is First Light Weaves Living Song. She married the Didact, responsible for setting up a conservation measure to ensure repopulation of the galaxy after Halo events. She discovered the true fate of the precursors. She's a guiding influence of the re-evolution of humanity. She, in turn, created the Didact, which I think we'll get into in today's episode, and secretly bred a new precursor race on Bastion. And, oh wow, she trapped the Didact on Requiem after he went mad. And then we stumbled upon him in Halo 4. And directed Spark to eventually take over Bastion and send the new precursors on their way to reseed in a neighboring galaxy. So we go into much more detail, talk about who she is, how she's influenced all the different characters that she's interacted with, because she kind of touches a lot of different characters through the Gaishes and other methods of the Forerunners throughout the Halo history. So definitely check out that episode, and I will now turn it over to Aaron, who will guide us through the Didacts.
Oh, there's a lot to do here. And a lot of this, as you can tell, even from the librarian's little brief recap there, it all ties together, so we can skip some bits because we've already covered it, which isn't too bad. So I'm going to do this with Didact first and then Didact, because originally I was going to try and do them both together, but it gets very confusing. So we're going to go with original Didact and then copy Didact. So first up, Didact. Some facts. His name is Shadow of a Sundered Star, which is quite a cool name.
That is a pretty wicked
That
name.
is so dope.
It's a good metal band sort of a name.
Oh, it so is.
So he was born in 110,225 BCE. His possible death, we'll cover this near the end, could have been the 26th of July, 2557. He is 3.5 meters tall, or 11 foot 4. He's 360 kilos, or 970 pounds.
Damn.
He has dark... Yeah, he's a big chunky boy. He has dark brown hair, red eyes, and his rank was Protector of the Ecumen. Fun fact, by the way, the dark brown hair and red eyes are his final form after he attempted to make himself immune to the Composer. Before that, he looked different. So, because it only dawned on me in doing the research for this, when you go on Halopedia, they have two pictures for the Didact. They have the one from the terminals in Halo 4, and you think he looks nothing like the Didact we fight in Halo 4, and then you realise it's because he's older and he hasn't mutated again, so he looks a bit more normal Forerunner. And then he has that weird vampire thing going on in Halo 4 that we'll get to later. So, okay, let's start with this. Early life of the Didact. So, the Didact is a Promethean. He's a member of the most powerful class of warrior servants. He was trained by a legendary Forerunner warrior called Bitterness of the Vanquished. Another good name.
Also a very solid name.
Yeah, I think Forerunner names for me are up there with UNSC ship names. They have some
they do
really
sound like
good
spaceships.
ones.
They're cool.
Yeah, if you told me in this there would be a Forerunner with their name was just semi-name or whatever. There's some really good UNSC ships out there. So let's see. The Didact got his name the Didact while he was teaching at the College of Strategic Defense of the Mantle. His students gave it to him because he was demanding but fair, and he liked it. The Didact was elevated to the rank of Protector of the Ecumen around 2,000 years before the war with the humans. He had a romantic relationship with another Promethean commander called Endurance of Will, and he probably would have married her until he met the homewrecker, the librarian.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
That interrate marriage, no one likes that.
No.
No, we don't do that sort of thing. So as I said, despite the fact that marrying between rates was frowned upon, the Didact and the librarian would eventually go on to marry. They would build a house together on the planet Numdagro. I assume that's what it's called. They would have several children together, all of whom would become warrior servants like their dad. And then this leads us into the Human Forerunner War. So we've covered this loads of times, so we don't need to go too far into all the details. The short version of it is the Didact led Forerunner forces against the humans. Around this time, his giant overcompensation ship, Mantle's Approach, was built.
God damn it.
Yeah. His strategy for fighting the humans was called star hopping, and that was basically ignore the lesser planets, attack strategic points, and cut off lines of access, and it worked pretty well. The Forerunners would eventually go on to push humans out to the very edges of the galaxy. But as they started to push humans out of the territory they'd been invading, they discovered the Flood. The Flood were also, at this stage, retreating from the galaxy, so the Didact and his fleets were able to sterilize all the infected planets and would go on to corner the humans. Also, during this war, all of the Didact's children would die.
Oof. That's a big oof.
That's heavy.
That's going to come back to haunt us.
It will, yes. The final battle of the Forerunner Human War took place on Sharam Hakor. The Didact, while he was there, discovered a capsule that contained a creature called the Primordial. He had a brief conversation with the Primordial, and then he locked it up again. And he told no one what was said, not even the librarian. He wanted to protect them from being freaked out. Fun fact, the only other people to ever talk to the Primordial at that point were ancient human scientists who all committed suicide immediately.
Oh, that's not good. That's not a good
No.
sign.
So whatever he said was fucked up. Following the end of the war, the Didact advocated for a policy of vigilance and research regarding the Flood, because that would be wise. He also proposed the construction of shield worlds, and his theory for fighting the Flood would be spread shield worlds out across the galaxy, use them to monitor for the return of the Flood, and then take his forces and hop between shield worlds to fight the Flood.
Which is probably a pretty good plan.
It was a pretty solid plan because you could also hide in your shield worlds and take them into slip space so that the Flood couldn't get you. Like, it would turn into a game of galactic whack-a-mole, basically. And they would also serve to protect the Forerunners living in the galaxy, because you could all live inside the shield worlds. It was actually genuinely a good strategy, but Faber the Master Builder fucked it all up. He instead proposed galactic super weapons that would be used to wipe the Flood out. And the Didact was not very happy about this. He considered it an affront to the Mantle. There was a big back and forth between them, but eventually the Master Builder would convince the Council to go with the Halo plan. And the Didact was... his defeat was finalised in 98,445 BCE. And he was ordered to turn all his information over to the Master Builder, but he refused and instead went into hiding. So he hooked up with the librarian, she put him in a cryptum and then hid him. And with a slight sense of irony, she hid him on Earth with the ancient humans that had been de-evolved after the war. So she hid him in a place called Jamunkin Crater. And there he slept for quite a long time until a young Forerunner manipular called Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting came to Earth in search of treasure, found some human friends, and woke him up. The Didact, upon awaking, triggered a lot of things, and a big Forerunner fleet appeared on Earth looking for him, but the librarian had hidden him with a... what do they call it? A baffler.
That's
cloaking
a good name.
device.
It baffles them. It's perfect.
It has a very Doom ring to it. There's something about it. I feel like you expect battlefields in Doom. Or Doom. Dune. Why do I always say Doom?
Dune.
Doom's the one.
D-U-N-E.
D-U-N-E is the one with the sand and worms. Doom is the one with demons. I keep
Very
making that
different.
mistake all the time. Yes, definitely. The Forerunners weren't able to actually get the Didact because the librarian also hit a ship in his crater. The mountain in the middle of it grew into a Forerunner ship. He used that to escape. He would eventually take Born Stellar and his little human friends to Churum Hakor, and he would look around there to find out that a halo had been tested and that the primordial was gone and all the precursor artifacts were destroyed. He then realized while he was there that Chakis and Riser had memories of ancient humanity that were triggered when they were on Churum Hakor. So he realized the librarian left those in the humans, and he decided to take them to see could he trigger more memories, and he took them to visit humanity's old allies, the Sanshayum.
He pretty much took them all on the worst field trip ever.
Yeah, it really wasn't a great way to do things, because it goes quite badly for a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone comes out of that entire encounter very happy. No one's very happy with the end of that.
No, definitely not. The Sanshayum, they're quarantined in their system. They didn't get de-evolved like the humans, so they were treated a little more leniently. On the way to go and visit them, he does a thing with Born Stellar called a brevet mutation. What this basically is normally as a teenage Forerunner, you would carry out a mutation with a human, or with a Forerunner family member, and it kind of guides your mutation into your next form. You become more like your family elder that you do the mutation with, and then you go on to become an adult. But also, when you do your first mutation, you gain access to the domain, because as a teenager like Born Stellar, you can't access it. So the Didact instead offered to do the brevet mutation with him so that he could access the domain, but it didn't work. But it did leave an imprint of the Didact and Born Stellar, and that would come in to be important when we talk about the Isodidact. So the next thing that happened is, while they're on Janjar Quam, which is the Sanshayum homeworld, so many big words, the Didact was caught by the Master Builder. Everyone was taken captive. The Didact is taken prisoner and interrogated by the Master Builder, but he doesn't tell him any of his secrets. So the Master Builder decides to have him and a few other Forerunners executed. He puts them on a broken down Forerunner ship and leaves them in a flood-infected solar system in stasis. And then that takes us on to what would be the most influential part of the Didact's life. And this is the burn. So the Didact wakes up because there was a fault in his stasis bubble. So he wakes up on the ship and realizes he is trapped. He also realizes there's no armor and weapons. He finds a security guard there called Sharp by Striking, and they explore the ship together, and they find there are two other Forerunner prisoners. One of them is a builder called Maker of Moons, who turns out to be one of the designers of the Halo, and the other one was Catalog. So they were both considered problematic by the Master Builder, so he just left them to die as well.
Rip.
You know what? I don't really like you guys, so you guys are staying here. Bye.
Yeah. The Master Builder did the number one sin of all enemies in anything. Just shoot them in the head. Don't have an elaborate plan. If you want to kill them, kill them. Because it always bites you in the ass. So the Didact and the others get some control of the ship. They realize they're heading towards a flood-infested planet. There's also a flood fleet coming at them, and then there's another strange anomaly speeding towards them. And then they realize to their horror that it is the precursor star roads, which have now activated because the primordial is now on the loose and has control of them. So the Didact and Catalog decide to stay on the ship and get captured by the flood because he wants answers even if he dies, because he knows that he left his memories with Born Stellar, so in theory he could carry on where he left off. And the other two Forerunners have a plan, I think, to try and escape, but I don't actually remember if they live or not. But the Didact gets taken hostage. He gets taken to the Flood Fleet. He gets interrogated by the Gravemind. He's put under mental torture for a prolonged period of time.
Jesus.
I'm sure that didn't have any lasting effects.
Absolutely none, Krysta. He was perfect. Yes.
Oh, so he went into work the next
just
day.
a little vacay.
Yeah.
Yep, he was totally fine. He had no PTSD whatsoever. The Gravemind deliberately didn't infect him. He just drove him mad and corrupted him and gave a bit of a bad influence on him. So the Gravemind then releases the Didact on a ship and sets him in an area of space where the Master Builder will find him. Because Faber also has a sneaky side hustle where he takes previously infected Forerunner ships, cleans them down a bit, and then puts them back into use. Except he didn't always do it right, so he fucked up all the time.
Well, it sounds like he's got a nice little side business going on there. That's really commendable, recycling.
A nice little side hustle. He was pretty much the dad in Matilda, selling dodgy second-hand cars. Now I can only picture Faber the Master Builder as Danny DeVito.
Perfect. I think Danny DeVito would play a great Faber.
Yeah, that's done weird things to how this is going in my head now. So the Didact is taken back to the Ecumen, to the Forerunner Council, and he is forced against his will to relive his memories of his conversation with the Gravemind. He had managed to repress some of the memories, but this brings them all back to the surface and causes even more PTSD.
Oh.
Because, why wouldn't you just torture him more and then not give him any therapy whatsoever? So the Didact then has his privileges restored. Also at this stage, we're not covering it yet, but the Didact was doing his job at the time. So it's kind of weird because the Didact gets his privileges back, but he doesn't get his old job back. The Didact gets to keep that. So the Didact now has a little bit of free time in his hands now that he's unemployed. He goes off to Requiem and starts to sulk and brood in his bachelor man cave.
All right, that's relatable. I like that.
Yeah, and because he was interrogated by the Gravemind, he knows the Gravemind knows all of his thoughts, so he comes up with some new strategies to fight the Flood, because obviously the Flood know his old strategies and they're not going to be any good. So he gets a hold of a composer and he comes up with the fantastic idea to compose his Promethean soldiers, put them in the bodies of knights, and get them to fight the Flood.
Wow, that's a great workaround strategy that doesn't hurt anyone.
Well, it didn't hurt the Prometheans because they volunteered. So it turns out you can be composed pleasantly, but as we're going to learn in Halo 4, the Didact turns that switch off whenever he's composing humans.
It's just like a little switch on and off. He's like, pain or no pain. He's like, you know what? I'm switching this to pain. You guys have been mean to me.
Yeah, who wants to put the safety switch on for the humans?
Yeah,
so
no morphine for you.
No. But he had some success with this plan. So it actually worked. His group of composed Prometheans were actually able to beat a Flood fleet in battle, but he quickly realized he didn't have enough of them. So he started to ponder a new plan. And this takes us to... it's called Reunion here, but I call it They Definitely Had a Threesome.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Yeah. So, this is 4 years after his return. There is a meeting arranged between the Didact, the librarian, and the Didact. So, she now got 2 husbands.
Damn, girl.
Yes. Unfortunately, well, they don't say it in the book, but I assume there was a threesome and then things got weird. The reunion turns sour. The Didact starts to huff. He's arguing with the librarian. He's arguing with the isodidact. He doesn't think the isodidact's doing a good enough job. He's a poor copy. He then goes off to sulk. Oh, before he goes off to sulk, he realizes that he's figured out that the humans never had a cure to the flood. The flood favored humans and retreated from the galaxy. He then, in his head, decides that the librarian favoring humanity as well is a betrayal, because if she favors the humans, then she favors the flood. That's how the logic works in his brain.
That's great logic. Wow.
Yep. So he goes off to the other side of the planet, and there's one precursor artifact there, and he sulks at it. The isodidact follows him to have some words. They're about to have a fight, and then the flood appear, and they invade the planet. So the isodidact, the didact, and the librarian are forced to flee and go to the last safe point that the Forerunners have, which is the Greater Arc. So they head there. When they get to the Greater Arc, the didact, which is old didact, stays on Mantle's approach and huffs some more. He's become very mopey and moody. As the Arc is attacked, they ask for help. The didact says no. He has another thing to do, and when he's done, he's leaving. And it only turns out after the fight that they figure out his plan was to compose all of the humans on Omega Halo and turn them into more Promethean knights for his army. So the librarian tried to stop him, and her little ship is no match for Mantle's approach, and she gets swatted aside. He composes the humans, he leaves. She's very upset. She follows him back to Requiem, and this will take us into the start events of Halo 4. She gets to the planet, she basically overpowers him, stuns him, chucks him in a cryptum, and locks him up in Requiem. Her plan is that she will leave the Knights to guard the planet and make sure that no one releases him before he's cured. And she puts him in stasis in the cryptum, and he will stay there for tens of thousands of years and meditate with access to the domain, and that will cure his PTSD. And when he eventually comes out of stasis, he will help humanity to ascend and take the mantle. And she left the Genesis key there with him, and it would all be fantastic. Brilliant plan. Nothing can possibly go wrong.
Of course, yeah.
And then we have Halo 4, and everything goes wrong.
Oh.
Goddamn Halo 4.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into the events of Halo 4 because we have all played Halo 4. The short version is Chief and Cortana adrift in space, arrive at Requiem. They are guided to Requiem. They don't arrive there by chance. It's very much deliberate. When they get there, they get to the planet. They deactivate a satellite so they can contact the Infinity, which they also think is in the planet somewhere, except it wasn't a satellite, it was the Cryptum. They accidentally released the Didact, who has spent, I think, 10,000 years locked in his Cryptum with no access to the domain.
Oh
because
no, no internet.
Yes, when you set off the Halos, you kill the router, and without access to the internet, he went mad. So he's back on the scene, and his plan is to escape Requiem and have his revenge. So we all know how Halo 4 goes. He composes New Phoenix. Master Chief hits him with a grenade, sends him off into the slip space vortex, and Chief saves the day. And then that takes us to the final time that we see the Didact, which is in the Escalations comic, the next 72 hours. And I'll vaguely go over this because we covered this a couple of times, including a book club you can go and listen to as well. But the short version of that is the Didact gets spun out of the slipspace portal on the Well of Souls, or whatever it's called. He encounters humans on Which Halo is this?
No idea.
3.
It's, yeah.
3.
Yep.
He murders Black Team.
Oh.
He then goes to the Composer's Forge. There's a portal that takes him from the Halo to the Composer's Forge, which is on a shield world. He wants to take the Halos and go finish his job and compose Earth. But Blue Team are sent to the Halo. They investigate it. They have a fight. They kick his ass. In the end, they kill him by dropping the control room of the Halo onto the Composer's Forge. And it was left a little vague in the comic because I thought it looked like the Didact burning up in a ball of flames. Some people thought it looked like the Didact being composed. But we actually have some information that clears this one up. So, in the Halo 5 Guardians fight or Forge Didact toy description, it states, not all visitors to the domain are strangers. And in the Halo adult comic book, or colouring book, it also states on, I think, like page 41, after his defeat by the Master Chief and imprisonment in the domain, the Didact reflects on his memories of his wife, the Librarian. So it does appear that, yes, the Didact was composed and now resides in the domain. And that is pretty much the last time we see him. So, okay, that's the first one. That's the Didact. There is a chance, yes. There is, I think we've discussed it before, there is artwork out there, concept artwork from 343 of a partially reconstituted, like very broken down mechanical Didact with a cool cloak and all. He looks like he has bits of Forerunner mechanical body and bits of hard light.
Didact.
Yes. So the concept art's there. We may get him someday. I think we can discuss this at the end because we do have like a possible thought as to how he could be relevant in Infinite. But it takes us on to the other Didact. So this will fill in the bits of the story that we're missing. He is the Isodidact. Originally called Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting. Another good name, but not as heavy metal as Shadow of a Sundered Star.
It fits Born Stellar, though. Like, that's kind of Born Stellar's personality.
Yes. He was born in 97, 464 BCE. He is 3.5 meters or 11 foot tall as the Isodidact, and he was originally 1.8 meters or 6 foot tall as Born Stellar the Manipular.
Damn, the teenagers are 6 feet tall? What the fuck?
Yep. And they very much look like humans as well. Random weird thing that may or may not be relevant in the Librarian episode that we covered. He weighs 360 kilos, 790 pounds. He has pale bluish white hair, he has grey eyes, and he is also Protector of the Ecumen. So, the history's a little bit different when it comes to Born Stellar. In his early life, Born Stellar comes from a family of builders, not warrior servants. Born Stellar was the rebellious child. He refused to follow in his father's steps to become a builder. So, as good forerunners, they sent him off to live with a foster family to learn discipline and the hardship of living with miners on Edom, which is actually Mars. So,
oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. While he's there, his AI in his armor, who was put there by the Librarian, starts to teach him things about the precursors, and he eventually gets it in his head that he wants to go and look for precursor treasure.
Because that's what you do. You look for treasure when you're trying to find yourself.
You do, yes. I think the Organon, it's the big one he's looking for. He doesn't know what it is, but it's this big, it's like the ultimate holy grail precursor treasure. So he jumps on a transport heading to Earth, and he sneaks there. When he gets there, he arrives at the city of Morantic, and he meets Chakas and Riser, who are two humans that take him on a guide for precursor artifacts. They head to Jamonkan Crater, where the librarian put the Didact's cryptum. They wake him up, and after he recovers, he takes the crew on their merry trip around the galaxy. So while he's there, like we said, he does the brevet mutation with Born Stellar. It's supposed to give him access to the domain. It does not. It also leaves an imprint of the Didact in his mind, but he doesn't have access to it at this point either. But
Epic
it will
fail. Come on.
Yes. It just makes him, I think it just changes him physically. Makes him look a little more like a warrior servant. After that, they're caught by the Master Builder at the Shansium homeworld, and Born Stellar is sent back to his family. Then
we're like, what the fuck happened?
Yes, there's a lot of
Fuck
shit
you.
going on there. It's like, look at you look like a warrior servant. They're very racist or classist or whatever it is. They really don't like this mixing between rates. They all get very upset about it. So he then gets summoned to court as a witness. This is hang on. Oh yes. He's taken as a witness for the trial of the Master Builder because he fell out of favour with the Forerunner Council. And then the trial is interrupted when Mendicant Bias attacks Mithrillian. During the battle, the Didact's personality suddenly awakens inside Born Stellar, takes control of his body, and allows him to escape Mendicant Bias and board a ship and escape to the Greater Ark. And he happens to go there with Glory of a Far Dawn and Splendid Dust of Ancient Suns. Another good Forerunner name.
Names, yeah.
So now we're on to becoming the Didact. So Born Stellar arrives at the Greater Ark, hooks up with the librarian. She reveals that at this stage they believe the... Don't snigger at hooks up.
If you're trying to be like someone, fuck their wife. Bam. You got it.
Well, she's technically his wife.
I mean, technically. In a weird, kind of strange way.
She knew
but-
what she was doing.
I'm telling you, that meeting
What
the
does
three
that
of them
make the
have later.
librarian? She saw this, like, underage kid. She's a groomer. Oh my god. Librarians grooming people.
Well, look, when you're like 10,000 years old, everyone's underage. Like, there's no winning at that point.
I mean, it's still
Don't shame their culture, Krysta.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I
don't
didn't mean-
You weren't
kink
there,
shame
Krysta.
her.
You weren't there.
Okay, I won't. I'm sorry.
Right, so what have we got now? Yes, at this stage, the librarian thinks that the Master Builder executed the Didact. He's in the burn being tortured. So the Didact's personality imprint on Born Stellar takes over. He becomes the reincarnated Didact, and he promises he will return control to Born Stellar when it's all over. That was a lie.
It's never over.
No. But then the Isodidact goes and does some cool shit. He tracks down Installation 07, which is under the control of Mendicant Bias and the Primordial. And that is Primordium in the Forerunner trilogy. His fleet intercepts the Halo Ring while it's on collision with a planet, or collision course with a planet. He deactivates Mendicant Bias. He then saves the Halo and its research data. He does that he gets to the control room and he finds out that Mendicant Bias hooked up a load of partly flood-infected beings and ancient humans to the control system, and he was going to use those as sort of like organic processors to control the Halo. So the Isodidact takes control, guides the Halo around the planet. It's a cool scene. The Halo suffers massive damage. But then
Well,
the
to be clear, like the planet goes through the ring itself.
Yes, this is
It's
This is
really
the-
cool.
It's a cool image. Yeah.
these are the old original Halo rings, which are like 40,000 kilometers across. So they're much bigger than the rings we have in modern day Halo. So it slips over the planet, suffers massive damage, and then he instructs the Halo to like scale down to 10,000 kilometers across, and then it's going to be implemented into the new Halo array. So that halo is decontaminated and sent off to the Greater Ark. Chakas ends up being mortally wounded on the installation, and his body can't be saved, so the Isodidact decides to turn him into a monitor.
Yay!
Sound guy.
Yep. His job will be to look after the librarian's humans on the Ark. So, not the worst job.
No, that's a pretty good job.
Yeah, he also takes Chakas with him to interrogate the Primordial. He gets answers he doesn't like from the Primordial. He ends up...
That's every time anyone talks to the Primordial, they get answers they don't like.
Yes, you kill yourself, or you lock it away for another while, or you age it by millions of years in a slipspace bubble and make it turn to dust.
That too.
Which, yeah, as a way to kill a creature that is immortal, it's pretty genius.
It is. It's very clever.
It's a great scene where at the end of the interrogation, it describes how it's twitching inside this bubble, and then Chakas realizes it's not twitching, it's just slowly moving but super sped up, and then it slowly just falls apart and crumbles to dust until there's nothing left. And that ends the Primordial. But the Primordial will return.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, and then this leads on to the final years of the Forerunners. So, in the years following the defeat of Mending and Bias, the Isodidact and the Librarian go up the ranks again and become popular with the Forerunners. They manage to postpone the firing of the Halos for a while, and they make the Council reconsider. But this doesn't last for long, because the Flood are also spreading across the galaxy. They're increasing the rate at which they spread. They're attacking more planets, and the Isodidact spends the next couple of years traveling the galaxy with the Librarian's fleet, cataloging sentient life. During their work, they go to Earth, and the two of them personally oversee the cataloguing of the humans. Then the Flood arrive in the system, and it's a big emergency. They arrive in the sector, not the system. And the Isodidact has to return to the core of the Ecumen because there aren't enough resources anymore to protect everything. The Isodidact then gets put in charge of protecting the Orion complex. He's in charge of their defenses. He keeps chatting with the Librarian over text message, which is the terminals in Halo 3. Well, it's more of an email conversation, really.
Yeah, where you're just a big, long email chain you have no context for.
Yeah, it's a little back and forth. You can go and read through them. Fun fact, those terminals also change depending on the difficulty you play the game at when you read them. So you can go and have a look at them.
Interesting.
Yep, then the Didact comes back on the scene, and then the threesome is arranged.
Yeah.
Then we have the same thing again. There's a conversation. The Didact gets pissy. Born Stellar, the Isodidact, goes to confront him. It almost ends in a fight. Then the planet's invaded by the Flood, and then everyone is forced to go back to the Ark. And then we get to the loss of the Greater Ark. So, yeah, this is quite a big scene in the books. It's quite a cool scene as well for the fight when we get that far. The Greater Ark is now the last home of the Forerunners. They've lost everywhere else. There's an emergency conference called because they know they're going to be attacked by the Flood. There's an argument that breaks out between the Isodidact and the other commanders who want to give the Didact control of the Forerunner armies again because they think the original's back, he's great, we'll give it to him. But funnily enough, the Master Builder comes to the aid of the Isodidact and says, no, the Didact is all sorts of fucked up now. The Flood have an influence over him, and this is because when the Flood released the Didact from the burn, they sent him back with a message from the Master Builder's consumed family who are now part of the Flood.
That's fucked up.
Yeah,
Big
he
fucked
returned
up.
to the galaxy and basically tells the Master Builder, hey, your wife and kids say hello.
What a great thing to do! Wow.
Yeah, so like the Master Builder can immediately see that the Didact is a lost cause. So they stick with the Didact. I feel like we should call him like Didact Light or something.
I think ISO's
Diet
fine.
Didact?
The good
Diet.
Didact.
So the Flood end up arriving at the Greater Ark. They come in their star roads, they surround the Ark, and the Didact and Faber travel to Omega Halo. And their plan is to use the Halo to break a line in the Star Road's defenses and let people evacuate from the Ark. This goes kind of according to plan, but not really. But while they're there, the Master Builder gives the Didact the coordinates to the second Ark that he had built in secret.
Yeah.
Yes,
Backups.
he built a backup smaller Ark called the Lesser Ark because they're really creative with their naming conventions here. I'm surprised they didn't just call it Big Ark, Small Ark.
The UR arc and the ISO arc.
Faber then decides he is going to stay behind while the Didact and the others evacuate. He uses Omega Halo to fire at the Star Roads, create a path out. The Star Roads then attack, destroy Omega Halo, destroy the Greater Ark, and as the control room collapses, the Didact is falling through the seemingly infinite pit that they build all of their control rooms above because
Why
God
not?
forbid you ever fall off a bridge without a handrail or something.
Well, Forerunners aren't allowed to be clumsy, so they just make it so, like, the problems kind of fix themselves.
Yeah, it's maybe not the best design, but conveniently enough, as he's falling to his death, Bornsteller's personality surfaces and takes over his body, and then he loses consciousness. So Bornsteller's like moment to come back and take control is as he's falling to his death. But luckily
He's
for the
like, here you
Didact,
go. You can have your body back now.
yeah, it really was. Yeah, I don't want to experience death, so have it back, kid. But
It's not very nice.
luckily enough, Chakas, Monitor Chakas, manages to save the Didact. He catches him, takes him aboard his Gargantua class transport, where he saved a load of human specimens from the Greater Ark, and they fly to the Lesser Ark with the last of the Forerunner evacuees and all the rest of it. And then we get to the firing of the Halos. So at Installation 00, the Didact assigns the monitors for each Halo, gives them their names. He renames Chakas to 343 Guilty Spark and gives him Installation 04. He then deploys the Halos throughout the galaxy. And then he goes to the Citadel where he prepares to eventually fire them. Also, to buy some time during all of this, he has offensive bias sent out with the last of the Forerunner fleet to intercept Mendicant bias and try and stop them from reaching the Lesser Ark and destroying it. Offensive bias would in fact go on to win. So, in the final moments before the activation, the Didact exchanges a number of messages with the Librarian. As we covered in the Librarian's Dossier episode, she went to Earth in an effort to draw the Flood away from the Ark. She went there and broadcast her location. There's a back and forth series of messages where the Didact tries to convince her not to go through with it. She says no. He then tries to send a rescue party, but they're intercepted by Mendicant Bias's fleet and killed. So he has no choice but to activate the Flood or the Halos. So there's like a sad sorry message and then zap, and that's the end of all life in the galaxy. And funnily enough, that is how Mendicant Bias gets defeated, because when the Halos activate, they kill all of the flood forms on his ships, and then he loses control of a good chunk of his fleet, and Offensive Bias is able to wipe him out.
And then he cuts him into 3 pieces.
He chops him up and decapitates him, and then they have a trial. So the Isodidact holds a trial. He decides not to destroy Mendicant Bias. Instead, he entombs him on the Ark and leaves him to contemplate atonement. And that is where he is to the present day, because no one will fucking go and dig him up. And he continues
He's there
to be
when
there.
we need him. He's just there. He's there when we need him, Aaron.
Also, in the terminals in Halo 3, the second page of the terminals is always a series of messages from the shard of Mendicant Bias that was on the Dreadnought. So it returns to the Ark as well. The Isodidact then goes on to make friends with the Librarian's replacement, called Chantagreen. They eventually go to Earth and oversee the repopulation of the humans. And while on Earth, Isodidact has one last conversation with Riser, the human, where he basically says that the Forerunners are going to cease meddling in the affairs of the galaxy. They're going to go off and find a new place to live and just keep to themselves. But the two of them agree that
they're dead, so I mean...
Yeah, there's a few hundred Forerunners left, and that's it. So they're going to go off to another galaxy and maybe someday meet up with humans again, and everyone will hopefully get along a bit better, but who knows? After they leave Earth, it takes a couple of centuries to repopulate the galaxy. During that time, Born Stellar and Chantagreen hook up and get married.
Hey!
Because
Yay!
if you can't have the other guy's wife, the best thing to have is her replacement.
True.
But at least this isn't as dodgy. This is the replacement marrying the replacement. So...
much better.
Yes. Yes. The Forerunners are finishing up. I think they're repopulating the Sansaeum planet. And Born Stellar remembers he got one last voicemail from the Librarian before she died, but he thought it was a trick from the Flood, so he never listened to it. And this takes us into the story of Promises to Keep. That is one of the stories from Fractures. So the short version of that is the Librarian reveals to the Isodidact that when they fire the Halos, they're going to destroy the domain, because the domain is actually a creation of the precursors, and Halo arrays destroy precursor technology. So she tells the Isodidact that the domain is located on Mithrilian, and they're going to have to go there after the Halos are activated and try and fix it.
They have to
because
reboot
she's
the
also
server.
Yes, they've got to reboot the server because she's realised she left the Didact locked up with no internet. So the short version of this story is they go back to Mithrilian. They are confronted by Abaddon, which is the AI that runs the domain. It's pretty much what he is, isn't it? Or it.
Yeah.
It's it makes Mendicant
keeper.
Bias. It makes Mendicant Bias seem like Virgil by comparison to what Abaddon is in terms of AIs. Abaddon wants to judge the Isodidact and the other Forerunners for crimes against the Mantle, but they manage to evade that, and eventually a Forerunner called Growth, through trial of change, sacrifices herself to merge with what's left of Abaddon and the domain and eventually restore it.
Cool.
So that's their job finished. The galaxy is repopulated. They all decide to go off to other galaxies to live peacefully and not interfere anymore. Born Stellar and Chantagreen go off and settle down together. They have a child and they live like a quiet, relaxed farming life.
They basically just play Stardew Valley for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's what they go off and do. But they do hint at the end of that story that the planet they're on, they kept their ship, they kept their armor. It's the Audacity, it's the librarian ship, but it's there, so he has the potential to come back someday. And then the only other thing to mention about the ISO Didact is that 100,000 years later, a record referred to as the Born Stellar Relation, which is basically Primordium, the audiobook, is discovered by the UNSC. It was a record kept by Catalogue. They find it on Trevelyan, and it's basically the basis of all their knowledge of Forerunner society. And they compare a lot of that with the records that Guilty Spark has in Primordium, because you get a lot of back and forth with the UNSC guys where they're like, how the fuck are these halos this big? We've never seen halos this big before. And you're like, lads, it's in the diary. Don't argue
Read the
with
book,
us.
guys. Come on.
Yeah. So that is pretty much where we are now. The Isodidact, in theory, could be alive. The bit of the story where he's on the planet with Chanticleer and their son doesn't have a date. We don't know when it is. We don't know where it is. So he has the potential to reappear someday, just like the Didact. And that is the 2 Didacts.
Man, that's a lot of
Yay.
things.
That's a lot of stuff. Jesus.
There's a lot
Good
to
work.
cover, yeah. So the question we have in all of these dossiers is, how do we think this might potentially relate to Halo Infinite? So
I don't think we're getting any Didact stuff in Infinite, to be honest.
No, but they're both still on the table to potentially show up at some point in the Halo universe. I mean,
They'll
I
still open a
think-
book for sure, but a game, I don't know.
well, we
I
still have
think-
the question of who the Harbinger is. And
yes, it's got the most potential to be possibly the composed Didact. Like, that's a theory a lot of people have, is that the Harbinger could be him.
I'd be okay with that, just because having the Didact back would be so cool.
he's such a great character.
Yeah, it would be cool to have him back, and like, it's not a new character. It links back into Halo 4 again, ties them into the rest of the Reclaimer games, so that end of things would be cool. Plus, like, it's a good character and a great voice actor,
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
and it would be nice to
Yeah.
get him back. And if Cortana is seemingly out of the picture in this game, and you need like an AI adversary, it's either that or the Harbinger is the Warden Eternal. Like, those are your 2 choices. And to be perfectly honest, they're both cool Forerunner characters, so I wouldn't mind if it was either.
Yeah, I kind of got sick of the Warden Eternal from Halo 5 just because
They've overplayed him.
Yeah, they did.
for sure.
Yeah. That's why, personally, I think, like, if it's going to be anyone that has the potential to be the Didact.
As long as it's not overly confusing for those who don't read the extended lore, because if you only play the games, then you're like, well, wait, didn't I defeat the Didact at the end of Halo 4? So if there's a way that they bring him back that it kind of explains very briefly on how he more or less survived, then I'm cool with bringing him back just to kind of tie that end off.
Oh my god, can we have like a quick, like, 2-minute cutscene of watching Master Chief fucking, like, yeet him off the Halo? Because that would be fantastic.
That would
And to
be
show
pretty
him being
cool.
Yeah,
composed,
I
that
think
would
we
be pretty
need... We need, like, the Halo Wars 2 cutscene where Isabel explains to everyone who Atriox is, but we need one of those for the Didact
Yeah.
that just covers, like, the last 72 hours, being composed, coming back again. You could show him, like, getting his mission orders from Cortana. Or,
Yeah, something like that.
It needs to be something.
yeah.
But other than that, I'm kind of okay with them just being more or less just somewhere randomly in the universe.
Hiding
It's
somewhere.
it leaves it slightly open, but it's like, well, if we never talk about them again, then it's just like, okay, well, that was their story.
Yeah,
You know.
I think the only
So-
other place you might get Didact interaction of any sort would just be audio logs. Like, they're talking about audio logs playing a big part of the game. If
Yeah.
you had logs
I
that
could see
were
that.
Yeah.
him inside the domain, like talking to himself and ranting and raving, like stuff like that would maybe be cool.
Perhaps.
So
Yeah.
and like maybe that's all the Harbinger
possibilities
is.
are
Maybe
there.
it's not a physical character. Maybe it's just like a voice. You know,
Yeah.
you don't actually have to have the Didact back. You could totally just have, you know, the Harbinger as a voice from the beyond, telling them what to do. But do we have any other thoughts on ways that the Didact could relate to Halo Infinite? Do you think the ISO Didact is going to come back and fuck everyone up?
No, I don't think so. The isodidact would be so much harder for them to explain without having like a huge thing.
He's just going to appear in the galaxy with a straw hat and a check shirt and like a pitchfork.
There you go.
Get off my property.
This is my farm.
Nice.
Well, right then. Thank you very much, Aaron, for that extensive dive into the two Didacts. Next time, I believe we're talking about Atriox and other banished leaders that we know about, anyway. And yeah, we're kind of getting towards the end of our series here, at least for this kind of first section before Infinite comes out. I think we have 10 episodes planned, and yeah, so just kind of stay tuned to the feed and follow us and all that for the next episodes of this lore series. We also have our Road for Infinite lore series, as well as our other Halo shows that we discuss at the beginning of the episode. But thank you all for joining us. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, you can find all of our shows and our last episodes and previous episodes on our website, halopodcastevolved.com. We also upload a fair number of the episodes on YouTube if you prefer to watch and listen to the audio shows. If you want to join our Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/halopodcastevolved. Thank you for all the support from our current patrons, and we look forward to finding new ways to reach out and connect with you all. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 205-EVOLVED, which is 205-386-5833. We can listen to your voicemail and share it on one of our live shows that we do every month. And with that, everyone, I've been your host, Oran, and thank you all for joining us, and until next time, evolved.
Evolved.
Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo.